Okay, so my name is Tim Few. John was actually my dissertation chair at Katz. I actually got my MBA here at Katz, graduate to school of business too. So my father went here, my mother went to Chatham, so well versed in the Oakland, culture. So I think that our charge was working within the community, and we did talk about a lot of things. We went here, we went there, we came back, and everyone had sort of their, so we tried to bring this all together. And I think that, what we came up with, and I think it kind of harkens to what the gentleman in the back left corner talked about, and then what some of the panelists talked about, which was trust and credibility are imperative. And I think it kind of, at least from the presentations, what I got, we got a sense of is kind of dictates a new approach needs to be taken with communities. Elvin started off by saying, recognize that community members have agency. Ask me, what do I want? Ask me, what can I do? And what do I have to offer? Right. So sort of building trust and credibility with the community is imperative in that if you don't have the trust from the community doesn't trust whatever agency or whatever they're working for, they don't think the agency or whatever organization is trying to work with them is credible, I think you're sunk. Right? So it's got to be something like that. So the first step, we thought, makes a lot of sense, understand the situation before offering solutions. And this goes to the question, what do I want? What does the community want? What's the feedback loop there? There's no, we kind of generated a list of things that you can do to try to understand what the community wants. There's like, system analysis, asset mapping. There was even, Andy said, right, solicit projects from the community. He used the word RFP, but didn't want to go to like a strict RFP, but something where the communities, right? So this is stuff, it's from the community out, basically, right? Look for fun and creative ways to solicit ideas. Someone in the group said, no one wants to go to a meeting, but they do want to go to a carnival. They want to do something fun, right? And I think that, Elvin said that a lot of, at least in his experience, seems like he's been, community leader for a very long time, said a lot of studies have been conducted in like the Homewood community. He said, what happened to this data? Where did it go? Never got any feedback on it, right? So it's keeping the community in the loop on the data. There's also a question of, does the community know what questions to ask? Right, ask themselves or ask about their own situation. Once you have understanding, then the question of the challenges, then I think the question back to community is, okay, here's what we think. What do you guys think? Here's what we think. Maybe here's some solutions, but again, make it community focused. Give the community access to the data, give feedback to community. Once you process the data, take the input, and then see how DC can apply, right? Community can provide some input. If you see challenges DC cannot address, look for resources, right? And then once you sort of get that, it's a co-designing process we see. Co-designing community partnerships, inviting people into the journey, spell out the benefits. And I think the important thing we got out of that is, there's, people like, people in these communities, there's, I think one of the words that the person used was there's people who are survivors and people who are surviving. The people in the communities are surviving. They don't care about carbon footprint. They don't care about DC technology, right? They care about lowering the cost of their electricity bill. They care about getting educated and maybe, right, making their life a little better. So the way, because we asked, well, how do you sell DC technology to people in a disadvantaged community? Tell them it's going to lower their bill, right? Tell them it's going to make their life better. Tell them we're going to give you street lamp light where you don't have street light. It's going to make your world safer, right? It's sort of connecting with what their real needs As far as alliances, I guess it's sort of like there was a lot of discussion around, like, when you get a lot of people in a room, a lot of different groups, you get a lot of conflict. There needs to be somewhere there needs to be collaboration. Everybody needs to be on the same page when it comes to alliances. Oftentimes, there's many players within these projects, and that was sort of an imperative. The other thing, as far as alliances go on the outside is, it's don't tell me what you can't do, tell me what you can do. And I think, so there was someone from the Pittsburgh planning, he was talking about, like, sometimes governments get in this, well, we can't do this, we can't do that. It's, well, if these are your needs, then we can do this for you. Right? Basically engaging the community, the leaders, the residents, private partnerships with corporation entrepreneurs. You all recognize that those alliances are all important. And I think that at the end, there was a sort of conversation around the white papers are important. And I think that someone said, I would not want don't stop the collective movement until you influence policy. Right, through white papers and a feedback. So it's not just alliances to the community, but it's a community back to whatever alliance community, governments or whatever. It's white papers, right? They should be influenced back for whatever results that you get from the initiative. So I think that it was sort of like this, the general theme of the discussion was the community, a different approach, basically. I think there's actually an opportunity here to structure a different approach. I mean, my mind, just, what I kept thinking of, just my own, I'm an organizational, I guess I'm a closet organizational behaviorist, and I kept thinking of procedural justice, right? And I also, and then the other thing I kept thinking of was like IKEA. When they go to new countries, they have sort of this system, like a book, how they do it, right? And I was thinking, like, if you could develop some kind of, like, here's how you engage, sort of a playbook or something like that. That's really community-centric.
And also from what you say, Tim, I see not a transaction, but a long-term relationship.
Right.
So there is not an end. Once you get the system up and moving, you're still there.
Right. Right.
That's when the transparency comes. That's when
Right. Yeah, so transparency came up in our discussion. There's transparency of what you're doing, transparency of information. Transparency, agency, community-centric. Any questions?
Actually, could I ask a question of the panelists who are remaining? This procedural playbook, I mean, clearly that was what we're trying to do for the last
That was my own personal idea.
Yeah.
I just had this to be clear.
But do such things exist? I wish Jennifer was here because clearly she works on those kinds of things, but anybody is aware of any such work? There must be out there, right?
In this particular space?
No, just in terms of approaching a community, whether it's for DC or whether it's for water purification or whatever. Yes, Kanan.
So there's some best practices. I think a lot of people facilitate these interactions with community groups. Obviously, facilitation is involved where you give voice to all stakeholders, make them feel that they're being listened to, find out ways to engage them. So short answer is yes, there are.
So we can collect those best
We
practices.
can incorporate that in there. I think the clear message from our discussion was that do not impose a solution on people, just because that, when you have the hammer, every problem looks like a nail. We want to see how we address the real quality of life issues and the concerns that the community has. And if we don't find a good DC solution for that problem, as a university, as an organization that has multiple disciplines, we shouldn't just walk away from it. We need to be more holistic in how we engage with communities. There could be a public health issue, there could be an entrepreneurship thing that is not related to direct current. In order to build trust and to maintain that trust, when we engage with the community, we need to find a solution for them, whether or not it is based in DC. That was, I think, one of the strong messages back from the group in our discussion. But But yes, the playbook does exist of some sort, that good practices do exist, and we can incorporate that into our body of knowledge.
Yeah, I was going to say it does exist. International NGOs like ActionAid, Oxfam, when they go into communities, they follow a certain protocol. ActionAid actually comes up with this whole participatory process. And I have a book that they created when they went into communities in Myanmar. So yeah, the international NGOs who know how to work in communities, I think they should be.
Though listening to Jennifer this
Yeah.
morning, they didn't seem to know, many of them in Afghanistan at least, didn't know how to do it.
Right, I mean, there are NGOs and
Yeah,
NGOs,
yes.
but then
So we can
there are
get-
some with better reputations and good practices.
We can get access to that, shall we? Would be
Yes.
something you could get us.
I think John Wallace brought up an excellent point in terms of community-based participatory research. The kind of standards we use when we are in a community to understand their challenges and the kind of engagement that happens, that's really what we are going for, in terms of understanding a community's needs. So I think in the academia, in the academic realm, there is a sense of how to approach in order to take a determination about challenges and needs.
I think even suggested co-authoring the white papers with community members. Sort of like sort of getting, they have that's their voice and it's their experience. It's
Certainly developing opportunities, pathways for participation for the communities to be co-leaders.
right.
It's perfect. If you want that local champion, you need informed local champions.
Yes.
What is, in your opinion, if you go and tell a community that you are going to probably save 5 to 10% electricity of, there may or may not be as much interest. What is the tipping point? What is the point at which, according to your estimate, the community may get interested? What is the key selling point that you will do?
The tipping point.
Tipping point? I would say what came up for us, and everyone can answer. John, I think you might have said this, was what's their pain? What's their pain? I mean, whenever you're selling something, I was in sales before, you got to get to the pain point for any person. So if you say, like, I'm going to save 5% energy, they might say, yeah, that's not my pain. Right? So the tipping point becomes when you get them emotionally involved in that, what your solution is, right, is going to actually solve a problem that is caused, that's really gets to the source of their pain. That's what that's what I took away from the discussion, and I think that sometimes you go in, at least what I heard was you go into with DC technology, we're going to solve this, and we think we know what your pain is, but maybe we don't. Anybody
I
else?
think that speaks to motivating factors, because I think different individuals, organizations, and communities have different motivating factors, and it's not always financial for everyone, right? So I think a lot of it has to do with, especially working with NGOs, figuring out what is that motivating factor. And it can be different for different individuals within one community.
Right.
So getting a whole community to adopt DC or solar, you still have to do that due diligence to figure out what is that pain.
Where's the right?
We'll talk about it tomorrow morning because we are on the verge of making either a brilliant move or an incredible blunder. Because we don't know which, but I should spread the responsibility across the four of us, not just me. Okay? So, but the four of us have been playing around with this notion of a community in a box, and we thought we had figured out everything that an off-grid community might need, which will be fitted in a shipping container and shipped out there. And it sounds like the worst possible idea at the moment right now. But,
Sorry.
but I think there are ways of getting around that. And but this is very, very important to us because this can really
We haven't
influence
heard
what we
about
do
your
over the next few years.
community box yet, so reserve judgment, but I think our group, I certainly believe this, addressing this particular set of questions, it's all about implementation in the sense of getting communities to buy in and help with the implementation process. That's what that whole set of questions is. And there's no one model. So your box, you got to be damn careful what you're putting in the box, conceptually and physically. I don't think there's any one model, and that's why it was touched on briefly here. Maybe as an implementation, I speak for myself now, maybe as an implementation step, you should be inviting somehow various approaches and then having some system of evaluating the success or failure of that approach, the criteria developed or whatever. But, there's no one model. It's going to be, one size fits all, just won't work. The communities differ so much culturally, both truly nationally as well as internationally, levels of economic development, degrees of isolation, and the whole, whole variety of other factors. So my own view is you should really, from an implementation standpoint, see if you can't get some approaches developed and take a look at whether or not you want to send out that box. And we'll hear more about it, obviously. You want to be a little careful about that, because that sounds like you've got a little kit in your back pocket, and you may or may not have it.
It can be modified, but basically, we'll talk about it again tomorrow. Basically, you thought it was a terrific idea because you're talking an off-grid village, you're talking power, you're talking communications, which is what Ashok has been working on previously before the DC power. You're talking about hooking that communication up to a couple of computers and a monitor for education and literacy.
Now you develop context and said, okay, this village, maybe you can spell out.
Yeah, we did do a census of the villages, found out what they have, even
So
looked
if you
at
have
education
that,
level.
that's your context.
Yes,
That's not the only possible context, obviously.
so get
That's your
them involved.
context.
But the
Yes.
issue there, and
And
really
even
help
then,
us here.
John, you're gonna have to think about how you get people to really buy into that. The analogy here, where these devices are sitting in people's closets because, they weren't motivated to go to the next level here. So,
It's really interesting, Andy, because when you're talking to our partners there, we're not doing this in isolation.
yeah.
They said we can't even talk to the people, they're illiterate. We can't explain to them what you're bringing to them. They have no concept. These are literally people in the Middle Ages, in medieval times. And how do we tell them about power and computers and education? So it is not a trivial issue for us, and we thought we were getting the best answer, saying this is what we think they need because we can't get that. But clearly what we're hearing today, that's an easy way out, and we cannot adopt
Well,
that
if
approach.
that's the way to address the specific issue of isolated villages, perhaps that's okay. But this problem.
But not don't try to repeat it all over the world.
And that was part of the challenge, is that there's such a diversity of situations where, DC power may apply. The solution for Homewood might vary very significantly from something in India or even in Hazelwood, you have variations. So we're trying to be broad enough to be inclusive. But, as you said, you have some context, and maybe that solution could work. But I think the other thing is also to, as our case studies sort of accumulate and we know what's working, what isn't working, that is something we can share with the community. We've tried aquaponics and it does work. We've tried XYZ and the communications, it's been a big boost. Safety, street lighting has worked extraordinarily well. And then let them take a step back and say, we like what we see, and yes, put that in the box.
Yeah, I'll just make one comment, following up on what you just said, interacting with the villagers. The IEEE Power and Energy Society, they wanted to adopt 3 villages in Mysore these are displaced tribal villages. They moved them out of the forest because the government acquired the forest and they said you cannot live inside the forest anymore. I think it's a very important point because the way they did it was when you try to interact with the villagers directly, independent of language barriers, they knew the language, but they don't trust you. Okay, when you come in, I think that is more key than the language barrier itself. So typically these villages, there is a smaller NGO that is supporting them for other activities, education, just interacting with the villagers to bring them up. And we found that getting connected with the person on the ground who is the interface to the village is the right approach, because if they see that person, then the trust factor changes enormously. Going directly inside the village is not a great solution.
You're absolutely right. And we were working with a local NGO.
Yeah.
Well, you had a name for that person too, didn't you?
Yeah, I don't remember the name, but I do have a name, yes.
So, if I can throw this in, maybe a refinement of the concept of a community in a box is to consider a catalog of solutions. So you've got an aquaponics solution, or you've got a power generation solution, or you've got a community building solution.
Or water purification.
And so it's not just the physical contents, but it's also ways of doing things and a manual on how to do some of these things. So and then you present it to that community to say, here's our offering, what fits for you. We have these different solutions that we've already developed, and that's what we can put in the box that we're going to send you.
So the extreme, it's not standardization and mass production, but localization and customization.
But you can still develop best practices for each solution and have the best that you have to offer available.
But the standard practice would be the best practices in approaching it. You do that across the board, right? But what you'll be offering would be different.
Just a quick thought about, since the question also included commercial business, the approach to that is very straightforward. There the value proposition is cost saving, and you would approach it in a different way altogether. But since that was in the questions, we put that in as well.